YouTubers, what's going on? King Alliance here. Today we're going to be installing new brake rotors and pads on my rear brakes for my B8 S4 2012 Audi. Have you guys been paying attention? We're now over 100 subscribers. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I appreciate all the love. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Got more videos coming, but if you have already subscribed, that means you're eligible for the performance package here by IE. You got the koozie, you got the big vinyl, you got a sticker here, and you got another vinyl here. So I'll be announcing the winner in the next video. Stay tuned. So by the end of this video, we'll have the rear rotors and the rear pads installed. It's a relatively easy process. Just gotta make sure you have all the right tools when you're doing it. So you gotta make sure you have a VACCOM or the OBD port plug-in. That way you can turn off your e-brake. If you don't do that, you will not be able to get the caliper open. You will not be able to get the rotors off. So you have to make sure first and foremost you do have that. Of course, the jack stands and the jacks so you can get the wheels off. You can also need some PV blasters, some WD-40. You gotta be able to loosen up the rotor a little bit. That's gonna be on there depending on where you live. I live East Coast, Northeast area, so there's a ton of salt, grime all over the roads. Mine were on there pretty good. In the video you'll see I have just the traditional hammer that I'm using to bust off these rotors. Afterwards I went out and got a rubber mallet so I could work on the front ones. Just a lot easier with the weighted rubber mallet than the good old-fashioned metal one. Also doesn't sound as excruciating when you're doing it, so it makes it somewhat easier. You also want to make sure to have some brake grease, some brake lube, so that when you're putting the pads on, you can grease the back of them. Besides that, the flathead screwdriver, while you don't really need that specifically, it's quite handy as you're going through the process. Also a C-clamp, an entire metric socket set. You're going to need a couple of them. I think one of them is an 18, one of them is an 11. You might also need a 13, but if you have a set, you'll be fine. You need the T13 torque wrench. Okay, because we've all seen the process of jacking up your car before, I'm going to kind of move that along at a little bit quicker speed. But when you're doing it, just make sure that you find the arrow underneath the frame where you can actually put your jack stand so that it doesn't damage the body at all, and make sure it's nice and secure when you're jacking it up. You put the jack stand underneath there. Try to be as safe as possible. You also want to make sure your jack stands have a sufficient amount of weight to hold the Audi. It's a 4-ton car. I believe I have 3-ton jack stands, and they seem to do the trick. There's no issues with that whatsoever. Then after that, I get the VACCOM, the OBD11, plug that in. At first, it only came up showing as a red dot on the sensor, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. This is a brand new port, brand new OBD11 port that I got. So this is the first time I was using my own. If you saw a previous video up here, I used a friend of mine's. His was already set up, so there was no issues. When I used mine, I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was having issues connecting to Bluetooth. It was showing up on my phone, but it wouldn't actually connect. I thought maybe I didn't have good enough Wi-Fi, that I wasn't able to update the OBD11, so continued to play around with it for about an hour, and then I realized that once I restarted my phone, for some reason that was the magic, it immediately updated the OBD11 app on my phone and immediately connected to the OBD11 plug-in, and I was able to turn off the electronic e-brake in the rear, thus allowing me to get started. It had nothing to do with how close I was to Wi-Fi or anything like that. I'm sure it'll help if you have a solid Wi-Fi connection. I was just using my network, my cell phone network. So after I got that turned off, I have it jacked up. Make sure to pull off the lug caps. If you have one of the Audi signature tools to pull them off, it makes it a whole lot easier. You can get those off, and before you lift it up, should probably have said this already, but before you jack it up, loosen the lugs, in case you didn't already know that. It makes it a lot easier. Because the e-brake is off, they will spin. So do that first. Once you get it jacked up, loosen them all the way, get the wheel off there. And then you want to remove the slider bolt that holds the caliper onto the carrier. You'll see here I have an adjustable wrench, and then I also have a metric socket. The adjustable wrench is to hold the nut on the slide piece from spinning. Once you loosen it up in a decent amount, that bolt will spin as well as the nut, so you'll just continue to spin it. You won't ever loosen it up. So you have to make sure that you're holding both of those in place. Now remove the top one, then remove the bottom one. Once you get those removed, you're going to want to unplug the electric sensor. That way you don't have any issues or you don't damage it at all. So then you use the flathead screwdriver yet again, stick it in between the rotor and the caliper to prevent the rotor from spinning when you're loosening up the T13 screw. That holds the caliper in place. It was easy enough. It shouldn't be too rusted on there, but if it is, use some WD-40 or some PB Blaster. Once that's removed, I just stuck a lug nut in there so that after I start hammering on it, it's just not going to fall to the ground. After I have the lug nut in there, then I just use the flathead screwdriver yet again to help pry the caliper off the carrier. It will be a little difficult to get off because the pistons are not completely compressed. They're still pressed up against the brake pads. Once you get that removed, then you can just pull the pads off. They pop right out. If you're having some issues, if they're rusted on there, they shouldn't be because they're sliding back and forth. Just take a flathead, pop them right out. Take a second to do. You can see mine are pretty worn. You compare them to the brand new ones, they're probably about a third. You don't quite yet see the metal on them, but it's just about there, so it's definitely time to replace them. See, I have the new brake pads here, the Acrobono. They're the ceramic pads. I got those for the rear side. I'm going to have 4 of them all together, 2 for each side. They also came with some brake lube. So I used some brake clean to break up some of that rust and that grime around the axle there. I also used some WD-40, let it sit for a while. And all in all, I was not beating down on it hard enough. I needed to really go at it. I was a little shy about it since I'm in a little quiet residential neighborhood. And also I'm using the scrappy hammer, so it was super loud. I need to just beat the crap out of it, give it like 3 good whacks, and it comes right off. You can see there's some damage already done to the bottom there. That's just because I was tapping it, like hitting it, but not fully committed to it. And once I got my shoulder in there, boom, 3 hits, came right off, no problem. So don't be shy about it. It's going to be a little bit of force to get them off. It's easier just to do it 100%. 3 hits rather than hitting it 100 times trying to take it slow. I did the same thing on the other side. You'll see here, there we go, just use some muscle. Alright, so maybe that's more than 3 hits, but it still came off. So you'll see it's loosened up, but right in the front there, what is this piece of metal? I have no idea. Some sort of spring clip that attaches to my wheel. this is the first time I'm seeing it. And there's a little clip that goes around the outside of that, and then it sets inside your wheel. Maybe do some looking around and figure out what's going on with that. If anyone knows, please comment below. Let me know if it's a big deal, if I need to get that installed professionally, or if I can just keep putting it back on there and tighten it with the lugs. I haven't had any issues since, but I also don't want to have any issues in the future. So if anyone knows anything about that, please comment below. Alright, you can see how I use the C-clamp here. There's this little clip that comes out on the bottom of the caliper that I mounted it to, and then for the piston itself I just put it right on the edge, so that way it was sliding around if I had the C-clamp in the middle of the piston. So I just moved it over to the side. It was nice and square and literally no resistance. Pushed it down with the C-clamp, bam. Alright, so now I'm pulling out the EBC rotors, and with the carrier on there, they fit. You just gotta push them up there a little bit. They're kind of snug. It's a piece of metal, I remember, that was contacting the rotor, but you just get it past that point and you're fine. So now we have the rotor on there. We're going to install the new pads. This is the brake grease that came with the Acuvona pads. So I put a decent dollop on it and rub it in. Make sure it doesn't touch the front of the brake pad. If it does, those brake pads are pretty much useless at that point. It's a lubricant, so if there's no resistance between the pad and the rotor, which is what you want to slow yourself down, those brakes will be useless. So when you're applying it, just make sure not to touch the pad itself. You only want to touch the metal piece on the back and the sides. After you have that lubed up, put the rear one in and the front one, and those just slide right into place. Hardly any force needed whatsoever. I can't stress this enough. When you're putting it in, just make sure you don't have any of that lube on your fingers when you're holding it. There is a small finger area at the top. There's an area where there's no pad at the very top. You literally can press your finger in there so that you don't have to touch the pads. Alright, so now that the piston's compressed, I remove the C-clamp and you just slide it on there. Just gotta make sure it's on there square. It goes on there really easily. Here, now we're just going to reattach the sliding pins so that the caliper is connected to the carrier again. Now, once again, make sure you have the wrench to hold the bolt in place on the slide pin, and that you also have the right metric socket to tighten it up. Do that for the top, do that for the bottom, and that is attached. Now for the sensor, plug that back in. You want to do that after you're done tightening everything up though, because you don't want to catch it and accidentally pull it, break it, any of those things. Now I don't have a torque wrench when I'm installing this. All I do is I tighten it until it feels comfortable. Alright, so once you have the wheels back on, what you want to do is make sure that on your VACCOM system you turn your e-brake back on. This is something that could be considered common sense, but after you're doing the whole process is very easy to forget. I actually forgot to do it. Put my e-brake on, my car started to roll a little bit. I was wondering why. Okay, well, I don't have it turned back on. You'll actually hear it if you have your door open. You can hear it turn on and you can hear it turn off. You'll hear the motor moving. The other thing is, because your piston is completely compressed, you want to make sure that you're pumping the brakes multiple times. Push it all the way down to the floor Do it again and again. Turn the car on. Do it a couple more times. You want to make sure that piston for both rear brakes is completely pushed out up against the brake pad, so that when you go to start moving, there's not a half-inch space there between the piston and the brake pad, meaning that it's going to be pushed out, but it's not going to have any resistance. You're not going to stop. It's going to be an issue. Push it down a couple more times, put it in drive, take it slow, make sure that they're catching. Okay, so all in all, what was the most annoying part about installing the rear brakes? I would say the whole thing was an easy process. If I had to find something that was the most annoying, it would be getting the rotors off, just because they were rusted up. But like I said, get your shoulder in there, throw some PV Blaster or some WD-40 on there, and they'll come right off. Not a difficult process. And best thing about it, just having new rear brakes. I know they do about 40% of the stopping power, but I could feel it right away after I put them on. Significant change in my braking. Alright, if you see anything in the video that you did a different way or have any questions about, make sure to comment below. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as possible. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, check out some of the other playlists, and we'll have some new videos coming out this week or next week. Peace. This is King Lions.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for coming.
Peace.